I was just sort of very Dunya centric, we'll say.
Yeah.
And I couldn't ever quench that first. I didn't really know what I was doing. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to run away. I'm going to go traveling. And I'd just been to a festival, and there was a mate there who I'd met, and he wanted to go traveling too. So I was like, listen, let's just buy tickets now. No plan. We just one-way ticket to wherever. And he was like, yeah, I'm up for it. And I was like, all right. So we're a bit impulsive. We got a one-way ticket to South Korea, and we had like 9 months. I started
South Korea started at.
Like we planned to go see 18 countries in 6 months. I ended up traveling for 18 months, and I only saw 6 countries.
Yeah.
They had these ideas of things that sounded to me like Jinn. So one of the guys who was like the head honcho of this Buddhist temple, he described that there's this other creature or these other beings. And I was listening to him, I was like, go on. He's like, that live in another dimension. And I was like, oh, go on. And he was describing it, and he said they were one-eyed. So they have one eye, and they have one concave ear on the back of their head and that. And that they had this notion of reincarnation and all this stuff. And it said that we had, our destinies were linked, but we were two different species. And that he could communicate with this other species, and like the way he would describe them, it was just like it sounds like the Jinn.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome to another episode of ReRooted. Today I've got you a special guest. I say that every time, but they're all special guests. Yusuf Ponders. Assalamu alaikum, bro.
Wa alaikum salam
wa rahmatullah. Me and him are bros. Right,
Broskies.
Yusuf, just tell the audience who you are. So you have got your own YouTube channel.
Yes.
It's Pondering Soul, isn't it?
It is,
I think she's changed it to Yusuf Ponders.
Yeah, I've been thinking that.
Yeah, inshallah.
But then I've just, you know, the logo and everything.
You're involved in a group podcast, aren't you?
Thought Adventure Podcast.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's me and 3 friends, and we every couple of weeks, it's supposed to be once a fortnight, we pick a question, and then we just sort of roll with it and discuss it for about an hour or so, and then start inviting guests on and have a conversation with it. If anyone really is welcome, Muslim, non-Muslim, etc.
So I had a chat with Jake today as well. So he's part of that. So we talked a bit about that. Well, what I said was what I love about it is you go really deep into the foundations of things, and which is always needed, because you can argue and debate about these little branches and the leaves of an argument, but actually getting to the roots of it is really important. ReRooted, mate. So, and you also work for the Sapiens Institute, is that right?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
So what are you doing with them at the moment?
So I run their Lighthouse Project, which is a project that's aiming at helping people that are suffering from doubt. So if they're ex-Muslims or interested in Islam, you can book like a one-to-one meeting. And it's private, and we do it on Zoom. And we've got about 7 or 8 people doing that with us at the moment. So it's me, Jake, Abdul Rahman does one, Hamza, Fahad Taslim, Dr. Uthman Latif, there's another brother called Malik. So it's a nice little gang of us.
That's brilliant.
And people can, it's a free service. They just go to the website, sapiensinstitute.org/lighthouse, and they just fill in the form and book a meeting.
Interesting, actually. Is it, do you get an umbrella of different types of people that come, or is it the same sort of...
No. There's all types of people. The majority of the people that use the service tend to be male. Yeah. But there is maybe like 30% of them are sisters or people interested in Islam. There's reverts. Wow. We spoke to ex-Muslims.
Really?
And we also help people that are wanting to get into activism. So we've even spoke to sheikhs and people that are engaged in Dawah already, and they're looking for advice, or they want to start doing Dawah. They're not really quite sure where to begin, and we help them with that. Or,
that's brilliant.
Yeah, even if, for example, there's someone in their family that's having doubts and they're not too sure how to handle that or deal with that, they'll get in touch with us, and we sort of walk them through the process, give them ideas and things.
Definitely a service that needs to happen.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. The plan is, inshallah, we want it to grow.
Yeah,
and we'd like it to be like a global service at some point, which is the big game.
May Allah make it happen.
Ameen.
Yeah, wicked, man. All right, we'll talk about Dawah later. All right, but first, people might not know who you are. I doubt it. He's pretty. Check out his YouTube channel. We've put it on the link below. But people might not know who you are. So we're going to talk about your journey. Like, you're not a born Muslim.
No, I'm not.
You're from the old England, like me.
Northern England, though.
The old England, northern. Yeah,
proper England.
I'm a southerner. He's northerner. It's a bit.
There's a bit of tension. I can feel it in the room already.
But because we love each other for the sake of Allah,
alhamdulillah,
we Oh. So tell us about your journey. What did you believe before you were Muslim?
So I was raised in a Catholic family. So my mum's Polish Catholic, dad's Scottish Catholic. And they met in the middle in Manchester. And I was raised there as a Catholic. I was baptized, christened. I went to a Catholic school. I went to a Polish Sunday school. So I was like pretty embroiled in that. But then Dad passed away when I was about 9. As I became a teenager, I sort of left Catholicism. We didn't really go to church anymore. Definitely didn't go to Sunday school.
When you say we, was that the whole family stopped?
Yeah, well, there was only me, my brother, my sister, and my mum.
Okay.
Really in Manchester.
Yeah.
But my dad's family are all in Glasgow.
Yeah.
And my mum's were in Poland, but many of them have come here more recently. So
Yeah.
they're living around everywhere, pretty much.
Oh, wow. So they were quite practicing before?
Yeah, the elder family were. So like
Yeah.
my grandma, you know, they would always have pictures of John Paul II because he was a Polish pope.
Okay.
And so
Is that what it was?
Yeah, so
Oh, wow.
they loved the fact that he was Polish. So there was loads of pictures of him all over the walls. And if you went into the corridor, they always had little, like, sort of things that held holy water.
Right.
And so you'd have holy water in there.
No way.
Yeah. Pictures
Wow.
of Mary, radiallahu anha, pictures of Jesus. So it was like they were very much into it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Cause, personally, I've never met like Catholics or been friends with them and stuff. So like the idea of having that in the house and stuff's so far fetched for me.
Yeah. Well, it was more so the elder family. My mum, she wasn't as like into it as the rest of them. She had her own reasons. We can get into that as well, inshallah. But yeah, she was more chilled. And we had like a cross above the doorway and things like that. But yeah,
it's quite it's a theme. So a lot of ex-Christians or Muslims that I talked to that were Christian, that's the theme, that they kind of believed in God, but they didn't really like believe in Christianity as much and things like that. And then the generation, like the mum and dad, were a bit more staunch with it, a bit more firm, and then the grandparents were really practicing and so on like that. It seems like nowadays, like the generation, our generation, are really like irreligious. Would you say that?
Yeah, you can see that it's tapering off.
Yeah.
So like my Polish family, they came from like the sticks in Poland, and there's a pretty interesting story about like their background. There was like a whole war that kicked off, obviously, and they were in the middle of it. Every time Germany and Russia had a fight, Poland disappeared, and they all sort of lived on farms. And my grandma was one of 11 children or thereabouts, and there was only one boy, the rest of them were girls. And her father, so my great granddad, he had quotas that the Soviets expected from them, and he had to give them X amount of food no matter what, however much he managed to grow. It didn't matter, it was just he had to give them a quota. And he hid food because he had quite a large family, and the Soviets found it, and they took him to prison and then left this family basically without the man of the household. And I think the son was one of the youngest, so it was like 10 women and then his wife just left to run this farm on their own. And crazy little things happened there basically, but he was sort of starved to death on dirty water and black bread. And then when he came out, he was very sick, and eventually he passed away. And it was sort of but crazy backstory from that. But they lived in Poland and were raised there. And then my mum was brought here when she was 3 years old with her sister.
Wow.
There's a whole thing about them. But
So your mum's quite like, because you was brought here like when you were 3, when she was 3. Yeah, obviously not when you were 3.
No, I was a twinkle.
So
in her eye.
so she's pretty English, British.
Yeah. If you met her, you wouldn't really think much of it. She can speak fluent Polish, but she comes across as English as they come. Especially now she's married to a Boltoner.
There we go.
And she's on tip 5, tip 4, with tip baby. She's getting a bit northern.
That's brilliant. Yeah. So yeah, we were on. You were about 9. Your dad died, and everyone stopped like going to church and stuff.
Yeah.
So like keep on the story from there.
Yeah. So my dad, I had an interesting relationship with him. I was like the eldest, so there's me, my brother, my sister, and I was a bit of a mummy's boy. And my dad was like a proper Glaswegian rough man from the Gorbals, which is like a really rough estate in Glasgow. And he had this huge emphasis on trying to make me a man. Like he really wanted me to be like, you know, a protector of the family. Yeah. And so because I was the eldest, he always put a lot of emphasis on that. Like me and my brother weren't that much younger than each other. And my brother got a little bike, I got a big bike, and I couldn't figure out how to ride it because it was too big. And he'd get angry and so on and so forth. And then when I tried learning on my brother's bike, I managed to do that on my own because it was a lot smaller. I could manage it. But yeah, so me and my dad had a bit of a strange relationship. My brother was a bit naughty, so he got on with my dad quite a lot. And then my dad was, like I say, he was addicted to heroin. He was in and out of prison quite a lot. And so yeah, it was quite chaotic, I'd say, maybe. But when he was in, it was all over the place. And when he was away in prison, it was a bit more chilled. But my mum would always tell us that he was in the hospital.
Yeah, I see.
And we'd go visit him and he'd be wearing bibs
to
distinguish the prisoners from the guards.
Yeah,
and she would say, no, they've just been playing football.
Oh, wow.
And things like that. But yeah, it was a crazy thing. But yeah, so eventually he ended up taking an overdose. That killed him. And then after that, the family just sort of, we didn't really go to church at all anymore and drifted away from religion. And I ended up getting into some fights in the Catholic school that I was in related to the way people would deal with my dad passing away.
Right.
And my mum ended up moving me away from that to a Church of England school, but they were a lot more secular. There wasn't really much going on with church and stuff.
Yeah.
And and so we just sort of became more and more secular. And then I went to a proper secular school in high school where there was no religion at all, basically. We had one RE class, and the teacher that taught that was not very good at dealing with the class. It was a DOS class, basically.
Every school.
Yeah, and so like we were just sort of consuming media that ridiculed religion quite a lot.
Right.
And so I became very atheistic as a result of that, because it was just whenever you met religious people, it was Jehovah's Witnesses or the crazy man that stood in a box in Manchester city centre screaming, "You're all going to hell," and that was religion. Yeah, pretty much.
I had exactly the same experience, bro. Like the most like my family were all like agnostic/atheist. I was brought up that way. My mum sometimes took me to Sunday school just to, like a free nanny. Yeah. They used to do like a summer school, and she was like well happy. She'd still go to work. I did, and that's the only like religion. But even then, it was like they're a bit weird. They're looking after me, but they're a bit weird and stuff. And the only like interaction had with someone that was religious, if they were like knocking on your door and being just socially awkward. And then when you watch TV, Life of Brian and all that, like comedy, it's all taking the mick out of religion. And so you're either weird or an idiot if you're religious, and that's the thing. So yeah, very similar, man. Similar.
So yeah, just
now we're sat here as Muslims.
I know, subhanAllah.
on a thing.
Who'd have thunked it?
Yeah.
Who'd have thought?
So, bro, you went travelling, didn't you? And that's what changed things. Or was there more before that?
So there's more before that. So basically, when I was getting to like 17, 18, I left high school. I dropped out of college a couple of times, and I was working in Pizza Hut. And there was a couple of friends that worked there as well, and they were Muslim. They worked back of house, I worked front of house. And we used to go Winslow Road, or Wimmy Road, Curry Mile, as it's otherwise known. And we used to go to these like shisha cafes and stuff and sit down and talk about everything, pretty much. And obviously they were Muslim, so the conversation of Islam ended up popping up.
Yeah.
And we ended up talking about things like God, and one of them gave me a Qur'an.
Really?
I started reading it. And obviously I read it as an atheist.
Yeah.
And so there were certain verses, certain things that kept popping out, which motivated more conversation because we went out quite regular.
So what did before we carry on, what did you think of Islam before you met these people? Did you know about it? What did you think about Islam?
There was a couple of Muslims that was in my high school, and one of them was a bit of a controversial chap. But the first thing I'd ever heard of was the 9/11. So I remember I was in like year 7 or something when that kicked off.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home and seeing it on the news and thinking like, wow, this is crazy. What's going on? And so that was like my introduction to Islam. Yeah. It was that on the news. And then going into school and then like seeing the controversy sort of unfold with Muslims in the school and what their opinion on it, and yeah, madness. And but yeah, and I just sort of grew up thinking that Islam is just another one of these crazy religions and just sort of associating it with that.
So it enforces that idea we had, either mental or socially awkward. So and you look on the TV and what do you see of Islam is all these bad people doing bad things. Oh, look, religion's ruining the world again. So it just reinforces it, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're talking to these guys, they gave you a Qur'an and you read that. So
so I was speaking to them about it, and they obviously, when you're hearing about it on the news, you get this very black and white impression of what Islam is. That there's the Muslims and then there's the kuffar, and it's like, and even the games we used to play, Command and Conquer Generals. It was like ELA Underground, and it was give
a little voice.
It was like the really evil bad guy character, and even like the units you had, like I'm not even going to say the words, but what the kind of units that they gave you was all.
I remember my one was Stronghold Crusader. Did you play that one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it was like the Arab ones were like, they make them sound really evil, and then the English ones or the Christian ones are like characteristics and you can relate to.
There's light shining behind them, and that, and they've got angelic wings and golden crowns.
The dark Arab, like that. It's bad, isn't it? It's just these subliminal things, isn't it?
Shapes the way you view things.
So what did you read in that Qur'an that sparked up conversation with those mates?
Yes, it was just general things. So we were going through it, and it was like, within Surah Baqarah, I think it just, within the beginning, it starts giving a slight reference to things like Qadr and things like that. So we started talking about that. And then there was the more controversial bits. So mentioning of things like slavery and, multiple wives, the roles of men and women, all of these things get cropping up, and obviously I started having conversations with them about it, and it was interesting because they would say certain things, and then I'd have a reaction, and we get to the bottom of it, and I didn't really have an explanation as to why I thought XYZ was wrong objectively or whatever, and it always ended up boiling down to, well, I have a feeling, I have an intuition. The society thinks XYZ about these things, but when you're just saying these things, it's like no, but that's unreasonable. That's irrational. It's like, well, what does it mean to be unreasonable? It means to not give reasons, and all you're really doing is talking about your feelings. Like, what are your reasons? And it's like, oh right, okay, and then trying to like give the reasons turned out to be a lot more difficult than you think it is. And it's it's quite ironic, really, because you're talking about being reasonable and being rational, and you can't really give like a rational argument as to why you feel the way you feel, other than, well, it makes sense if I'm raised in this particular world and this is how they generally think about XYZ, then maybe that might explain why I feel the way I do. But it doesn't say about anything objectively. It doesn't describe right and wrong. It's not really anything beyond that.
It reminds me of that saying, I can't remember who said it, you'll probably remind me because you're smart, but someone said, the more you lie until it becomes the truth. I think it was Goebbels or something, from World War II.
It might have been.
So you say a lie enough, it becomes the truth. And it's the same with our, like, the society's beliefs. It's everyone feels that obviously that's true, when actually, why do you believe that's true? And they whittle it down. They don't know why, and the reason it's because it's been drip fed through through media and so on,
and education. Even like from a very early point, I have memories of certain things being taught to us in school, and they're really like drilling in a particular narrative into our head, and you just sort of like, they talk it like it's normal, and I don't even think they're consciously doing it because they've just sort of been drip fed it themselves. And you just have this slow building up of a particular narrative, and and then before you know it, you are one of them. Like, it sneaks up on you.
It's mental. So continue the journey, bro. Continue the journey.
Whereabouts were we?
You were at the shisha bar.
Oh yes, shisha bar. So we were having conversations, and it was really interesting because I would say something and they would question me on it. And it's like, all right, okay, maybe I don't know. And I at that point, I think I was quite a strong atheist, or atheist proper, as it's referred to, where I thought that there was no God, and that was like a knowledge thing, that I knew there wasn't a God.
Yeah, same.
And so like engaging with them made me become more agnostic, and so I didn't hold on to it.
That's cool.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. And they were really nice as well. And this is one of the big things that stood out, was that they wouldn't, like, I would say something, and their reaction wouldn't be like, oh, you Islamophobe, or oh, you know, they were nice. They were understanding that I come from a particular background, and so they understood why I thought the way I thought about certain things. And so they were just chilled, and they would let me ask my questions. And if they didn't know the answer, they didn't give me pretend answers. They just said, no, it's a good question. Leave it with me. I can ask a scholar, or there's, you know, I can get in touch with a sheikh, and we'll find out. And then they would go away, and then they would ask a sheikh, or they would ask a scholar.
Yeah.
And then they would come back to me and say, oh, remember, last week you asked us this. Yeah. Oh, well, I've went and tried to find some answers, and I got these things here.
Yeah, yeah.
If you want, we can go over them. And I was like, yeah, no problem. And then we'd read them or talk about them. And we'd have more of a back and forth, and they would always continue that conversation. There was no rush. It wasn't like, you know, that sometimes you get the hard sale dawah. It's like, we need the shahada now. Come on, lad. Come on. Why are you avoiding it?
What those brothers were doing is what every Muslim now could do.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to do dawah, that's perfect. It's adab. It's character.
Patience,
sabr, patience, 100%. And calm down. Stop getting angry.
Yeah, don't be defensive.
Don't be defensive, and be a bit of empathy. If someone says if a non-Muslim says something that could be like, oh, that's a bit of offensive in your mindset, chill. Like, just let it pass, and answer the questions with like a relaxed tone. And if you don't know, go and find out. It sounds like they're on the ball. Though.
Yeah.
Do you know him now?
Yeah, I still talk to him.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
one of the brothers, Mela Bessim, he's just found out he's going to have a daughter.
Oh, mashallah.
Or a son. I can't remember now. That's terrible.
Maybe both twins.
Yeah. But no, they're going to have I think it's a son. They're going to have a child soon anyway. And he's an amazing brother. He helped me out a lot when I started doing dawah. He helped me with my laptop and things like that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, may Allah bless him.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. So they turned you into an agnostic by, what did they do? Did they challenge your belief?
It was just, I would ask them questions. So why is that wrong? Or why do you think X, Y, Z? And
yeah.
It would be a back and a forth, and then it'd be like, all right. Or like, for example, I would just say evolution. I dropped that on them like I knew what I was on about, because I got taught it in high school.
Yeah. And you have that confidence, like, yeah, well, obviously.
Yeah. And they were like, well, what do you mean by that exactly? And I was like, well, you know, things change over time. I was like, well, yeah. So what's the problem? It's like, well, you know, religious people don't believe that. It's like, well, you know, is that true? Like, for example, when we talk about Adam alayhi salam, yeah, he was a miraculous creation, but if we all come from him, how do you explain all the differences between us? Like, you have someone from Pakistan, someone from England, someone from China, someone from, you know, South America. They all look very different, but we all come from the same person. So there has to have been some sort of change over time. The only thing that we say is that he was not a lesser human, or he was not an animal or something. Mm-hmm. You know, he was a miraculous creation. Yeah. And if God can create all of this, why could he not create?
Easy.
Yeah, it's going to be like creating a human being would be easy if you can create a universe.
Yeah.
So, you know, it doesn't say that things don't change. And even if you were to hold, for example, that everything else changes, like, you know, say evolution occurs with the animal kingdom and the human being was like an exception, or it's referred to as Adamic exceptionalism. You know, there's what's wrong with that? Like, things change, right? But how does any of that in and of itself show that God didn't create a miraculous creature, or that he wouldn't be able to?
I think a lot of like atheists, agnostics, when they're approaching to have conversation with Muslims, unless they're into the debating scene or whatever, they impose Christian ideas to a Muslim. So they start straw manning almost, like going, well, yeah, you believe the Earth's 10,000 years up? No, we don't. I'm a Muslim. I'm not a Christian. I know I'm white, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, that happens a lot. Or another one is when they'll go, oh, but the Qur'an says the Earth was spread out like a rug.
Yeah.
And so therefore you think it's flat. It's like, well, why are you saying that? But you're not saying it's made out of cotton, or that it's like it's got tassels at the end, or it's rectangular.
My stairs are really flat.
Oh, that as well. And they're carpeted. You know, or you believe in a stair Earth that's got like why do you just take this one attribute and then just assume that is what the Muslims believe? And there's a verse in the Qur'an that refer to things like revolving and things. You know, it's not clear cut in terms of it being flat at all, and it's often like a huge oversimplification of the entire discussion. And having chats with these brothers was something that really sort of elucidated that.
That's awesome. It's like, it was almost like the first door opening from the cages of atheism. Like, because I was the same. I actively claimed there is no God, like as if it was a knowledge claim, and it was actually going to the foundation of my belief, like being honest with myself and realizing that I don't hold this belief with any evidence or anything. It is,
I had faith.
Yeah, I had
which
faith.
is funny because faith was a dirty word, and it was something
Exactly.
I would always ridicule religious people for. It's like, oh, you have faith, you have faith. So apparently I did as well. So like, but the difference between us was that they could recognize where their faith lay.
Yeah.
And I thought I didn't hold faith whatsoever in anything. And it just wasn't true at all. I had faith in many things.
So was it because of them that you became Muslim? Or was there more to the story?
Well, they were a huge part of it, definitely. So they like exposed me to it. They gave me the Qur'an. So I read the Qur'an front to back as an atheist. The first time I read it, it felt like it was shouting at me a lot.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I was the disbeliever.
Yeah, because you're right. I felt the same because this first couple of chapters talks a lot about the psychology of the unbeliever and stuff like that, and they will not believe we've shut up we've closed the seal and all that sort of stuff, and you're
looking at it and you're thinking, is this me that it's talking to here?
Yeah.
And then like obviously you're talking to it, and you at the beginning you get this sort of black and white vibe, but it's from a point of ignorance, because when you look at it holistically, it's not that at all. There's layers to disbelief.
Did you read it to refute it? Or did you just read it because of an interest?
I was just reading it because my friends are Muslim and they were talking about it.
I
can't. It was that long ago now, so that would have been when I was about 17, so maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And a lot has changed since then. There's many things that have happened. So I can't remember 100%. I just remember feeling attacked when reading it, and then getting a bit annoyed here and there, and certain verses just sort of disappeared into the peripheral, and I didn't really notice or pay too much attention to them. And there were certain verses that like popped, and like they really took a hold of my focus, we'll say. And so I concentrate on them and read them or talk about them with them as my friends. And it was just a whole completely different experience to what happened later when I became more agnostic. I read it again, and then it was like a different book. Different verses shone out to me that I was like, I have read this before. I don't know why I didn't notice that. And other verses sort of faded away or weren't as impactful. And then again, reading it as a believer many years later when I took Shahada, it was every time I read it, it's like a completely different book. It's like a living thing that changes as you read it, depending on your own state and your own being.
Yeah.
It's quite
what you're looking for at the time as well when you're reading, things really pop out. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It's every Ramadan I try and that's the most when I read the translation. I try and read it there regularly. But Ramadan, I'm on it, and every time it's like I'm reading a different book. Yeah. It's crazy.
And I don't even know how many times I've read it now, but when I do the same. I try to read it every Ramadan. I try to do a juz a day.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And then I'll read a verse, and I'm like, I must have read this a few times now, and I don't know why. It's only just. It feels like a new verse. SubhanAllah, it's weird. Like it's just been snuck in there somehow. But it's not. It's the same Qur'an.
Yeah, every time I read it, I get that. When I read big chunks of it, it's
always relevant to something that's going on in life as well. Which I guess is what's making it stand out more than
Must
others.
be the subconscious picking it out, picking those bits out. Like when I first read the Qur'an, kind of to refute it. Not refute it in the way that we know now of like I'm gonna get online and do that, but it was like
Qur'an refuted.
Yeah, because it was more like I'm ticking that off as false, like that sort of thing. And because I was in that mindset of I'm not the Muslim, I'm the bad guy, so to speak. When at the beginning when they're talking about the disbeliever and stuff, it's like, do Muslims think of me this way, stuff, and then completely ignore the other verses that would look kindly on me, because it's not what my narrative is at the moment. So it's crazy when you read the Qur'an, you'll get what you put into it.
Well, it's like is it a hadith? Where it says Allah is what you think of Him.
Okay.
So if you think of Him as unmerciful, He'll be
yeah.
If you see Him as a merciful being, He'll be merciful towards you. That kind of thing.
That's what you get, mate. That's what you get. I think it must be that, like, because I'm always thinking, what did I do to deserve to be like guided? And it's like I always really deeply think about that. Like, what have I? Because I was horrible. I was like,
yeah, we all
like,
will.
yeah, when I was like younger and stuff, and I was like, well, why did Allah guide me? It might have been those little moments where I looked at his book. It was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Or when I was looking at like
with open heart.
The bits where it was open, Allah opened up things for me. So, mashallah, subhanallah. So this podcast is becoming about me now.
I'm interviewing Ben.
Yeah, so go on.
So go on, Ben. Tell me more about yourself.
When I was 7, I'll tell you what. I will tell you a story. So we're talking about. We're just going off on a tangent now. But when we talk about atheists that kind of choose to believe in like affirming there's no God and stuff. A lot of the time when you talk to atheists, they are atheists for or they're anti-religious for emotional reasons, yeah. And I remember one reason, and it's recently actually, because I was around my mum's. We were talking about my granddad. My granddad died when I was 7, yeah. And I remember at that time I was a bit skeptical about supernatural things, but there could be things. I didn't believe in Santa anymore and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So my mum said, well, write a letter to Grandad. We'll pop it in his pocket and bury him, and it'll be a personal thing for you. Oh, that's lovely. I didn't go, I'm going to miss you, Grand. I went, right, when you right, can you come and visit me as a ghost?
Do you say
I literally said, I was like, I really want to know, like, I did say I would miss you and stuff, but I was like, please, like, this is my communication with you now. If there's an afterlife, can you come and show me? And so obviously, Ghost Granddad didn't visit me, so it kind of affirmed that at that point emotionally that there's nothing supernatural, and it was just like my whims and desires. I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, wow. I was 7, I think 7 or 8, and I was that young, and that's the start of the atheist journey.
Well, it's funny, because like for me, when my dad passed away, that was also round about the same time that you start learning as well that there's no such thing as Santa.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as the Easter Bunny. There's no such thing as the Tooth Fairy. And when my dad was alive, we were sort of sheltered, and we were told a particular narrative, even about what my dad was. So I mentioned he was on heroin. I remember watching my dad take heroin. He would it's the house my mum's still in now. So he would sit in the bathroom, and he would be on the toilet, and he would have tin foil, and he would ask us to save our Kit Kat foil,
wow,
for himself. And we always used to do that, and he said it was for his medicine. And so there's this narrative painted that this was medicine, and that he was ill, and even when he went to prison, it was a hospital. And so they painted this sort of like fairy tale around my dad, and my dad obviously was a huge part of that fairy tale. And I have memories of it, and I remember watching him burning the heroin and seeing it, and then watching the fumes. And he used to take the Bic pens, and he used to toot the fumes in front. And me and my brother would be making potions in the sink, or like just messing about, and we were there. And I remember finding needles and in the house and stuff like that.
Wow.
And visiting him in prison. And then when he passed away, it was like, what killed him? It was heroin. It's like, what do you mean? And then this fairy tale crashed.
Yeah,
so
the veil was taken over.
Yeah, and reality was there. And when we were younger, we used to, there was moments when we would find out one of the neighbours was a heroin addict. And so me and my brother, or me and my friends would come back, and we would be like, oh, he's a junkie, or that kid's dad's a junkie, and blah, 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 blah. And then I remember my mum would tell us off and say, you don't say that. And obviously she knew, because my dad was a junkie. And obviously it's not a nice word to use, but it's the one we were using. And so she would, without telling us, say, you shouldn't do that. And then obviously all the pieces started to click. When my dad passed away, it's like, oh my God, I am the son of a junkie.
Yeah.
And it was a weird experience, because that's when I guess I started becoming more and more skeptical of things. It's like, I can't believe anything.
Yeah.
Like, what do you believe? There's no such thing as Santa. What do you mean the Tooth Fairy doesn't put a pound under my pillow? And obviously you start growing up and becoming more quote unquote adult. And we didn't really have any real authority figures. So it was me and my brother. My sister was born 3 days after my dad died. And subhanAllah. And so we were sort of like just on our own. My grandma would babysit. My mum was a single mother, and she was always working in restaurants, like doing split shifts. So she was always at work. And my grandma was a crazy little Polish woman with paranoid schizophrenia, and and her English wasn't very good, and she would spend most of her time being very strange. We've got some funny stories about my grandma, but she was just an odd character, and she wasn't authoritative. She let us do what we want when we wanted. So we used to just go out. We started smoking. She even would give us tobacco.
No way.
As children.
Wow.
So we were like, 12 or something, and if we wanted tobacco, she would give it us, and it was a weird relationship with my grandma, but we were quite like free kids. We got to do what we wanted. I would save up my dinner money and get alcohol, and there was some of the neighbours would actually go in the shop and buy it for us, even when we were young, because no one really cared on a council estate.
Yeah, no. It's normal, isn't it?
Yeah. And so like we just sort of had that. And then on top of that, we're consuming media, like you mentioned, this sort of anti-religious stuff. You're watching stand-up comedy and they're mocking religious people, and that we just absorbed it like a sponge, and we became that.
And your personal experiences as well kind of reflected those beliefs as well.
Yeah.
I think let's move on to so you with your specialization is nihilism, isn't it? Yeah. And it sounds like you had like that path is nihilism you're going down. Like all the beauty of the world dropped, all that magic's gone, and it's all very real, and you're spending all your time consuming intoxicants and stuff.
Yeah. So that was it really. We were like the people that I hung around, what we generally tend to do was chase girls, drink alcohol, smoke weed, and just like mess about, basically watch funny stuff, play computer games, and life just became about that. And so when I started working and things, all my money was just being spent on fancy clothes, earrings that sparkled, aftershave.
Did you ever have the tunnels?
No. That was I'm too old. That didn't come until much
too old
later.
You're my age.
I'm older than you.
No, you're not. You're 32.
Yeah,
I'm 32.
Oh, you're 32 as well?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
I stretch my ears. Too old. Cheeky git.
Well, maybe you were just more
I was just
niche.
weird. Yeah.
You were.
I did it. I used to work in a tattoo piercing shop, and 8mm was the biggest you could stretch.
That was a mosher thing though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we weren't moshers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we were chavs.
You're a townie.
I did chill with some moshers because I used to do Warhammer.
Yeah.
And my Warhammer friends were moshers.
Yeah.
And I was the chav.
Yeah.
That used to be nice to them.
Yeah.
And so they welcomed me. Yeah, I was proper chav. I used to get patterns in my hair and that.
Yeah.
I used to do it with the cutthroat. And I might still have pictures of it, but once every week and a half.
Pictures.
Yeah, inshallah. But once every week and a half, they used to like cutthroat patterns into my hair.
Yeah.
And then my skin was always like shredded because it was like a razor
couldn't
sharp knife. No, because they did it for me, but it was a sharp knife.
Yeah,
and the way they do it, it was like it would just rip my head to shreds.
Wow.
But I used to pay £15 every 2 weeks to get that done, and then I would wear like. Do you remember when trespass pants were a thing?
No, what's that?
Trespass pants, ski pants with the dungarees.
No.
All the chavs used to wear them.
Oh,
It might have just been a North thing then.
Might have been.
Yeah, we used to wear trespass pants, which are like pants for skiing, but they had dungarees.
Right.
But we would get them and then put the dungarees down so they would dangle. We had like
skinheads.
suede Timberland boots.
Yeah.
And TN hats and all of that crap. And it would be like summer, and I'm walking about in bloody skiing pants because I thought it looked cool.
Because they're cool, yeah.
That kind of rubbish.
Yeah.
But so like I just got very absorbed in this materialistic sort of attitude. Law of diminishing returns sort of kicks in. Like the more you're using weed, the more you're drinking, the more you're chasing girls and things like that, the less of an impact it has on you, and the more you need to feel something. And I was just losing touch with it all. It was like I was chasing it, but it was like the thirst that you could never quench, and it was getting more and more frustrating.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out who I was and how I fit into the world, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And I was working in call centers and in restaurants, or just trying to figure out who I was exactly. And because I had this weird mixed sort of history So my dad was Scottish, mum was Polish. I never really felt English either. So like,
Really?
yeah, which was weird. People knew me as someone who was half Polish, half Scottish. And then I would speak to them. I was like, well, why am I 50% Scottish and 50% Polish? Like, oh, your dad's from Scotland, isn't it? Why is my dad Scottish? Because he was born in England. Because he was born in Scotland. It's like, well, if my dad's Scottish because he was born in Scotland, why am I not English?
Because
I was born in England.
That's weird, isn't it?
What about your mum? Oh, well, my mum was born in Poland, so she's Polish. But then and not just that, I'm 50% Scottish, 50% Polish. There's no room for any English there. So like I've been born and raised in England my whole life, but I'm not English.
Really?
Yeah, that was quite common. People, like, one of the nicknames I had in high school was Polish.
So what must it be like for people who are like more physically, like someone maybe from Pakistani background,
where they're more visibly foreign?
Yeah, like someone that like no, that's weird. We didn't have that in my school.
We didn't have many people that were from other places. Like, the council estate I grew up in, for example, was heavily white.
Upper white area,
and it's not so bad now. Like there's
bad. What's bad about white?
No, I mean my estate, you
joking,
plonker. The estate's not as bad as it used to be, is what I meant to say. And but like back in the day, I used to have friends. Their dads were like skinheads. They had SS tattoos and that. And
Mate,
Halloween, they used to go to the pub dressed as skinheads with Nazi signs on the forehead, and no one would say nothing. And
get their head kicked in.
Yeah, now they'd get their head kicked in, but it didn't happen back then. Like it was quite. They were the ones doing the head kicking in.
No, that's what I mean. No one said anything to them.
Oh yeah, because they would get their heads kicked in. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that was just like a normal thing. We used to see that kind of thing all the time. And if people of an ethnic minority ever moved onto the estate, they would generally get bullied off.
Yeah.
So like there was someone who moved onto our estate, and straight away pretty much people posting fireworks through the doors and putting dog poo on the door handles, until eventually they felt threatened and they'd leave. And then at the same time, these council estate people would complain. It's like, oh, all these people, they come here and they just all gather together, and it's like, well, they have to, because if they try to integrate, you bully them off. So they all end up moving to the same estate because they feel safe together.
Yeah, of course.
It's this nasty feedback loop, and then and then we had this sort of rivalry. So there were gangs where I lived, and they had cheesy names: DPH, Jumas Potheads. Jumas was the street name of the main road where our estate was on.
Yeah. What other gangs were there?
Down the road there was the CLC.
Why are they always like
I don't know
abbreviated?
acronyms. Because that was the cool thing, wasn't it? It was easy to graffiti.
Tagging it.
Yeah.
So what that stand for?
That standard for Cross Lane Crew.
Cross Lane Crew.
Yeah.
But you're northern, aren't you? So you wouldn't say it like that.
Yeah. And we had like a few of my mates were MCs, and we would have street battles and that.
Yeah.
Little giggle over there, and I was not very good at it. That's I never bothered. But I enjoyed watching it, and I enjoyed like bigging my friends up that were good at it. And it was just really cheesy. But and one of the estates,
can't imagine it.
I know. Trapped out of our head as well. So you imagine me with like patterns in my hair.
Yeah.
A big blinky earring.
Honestly, bro.
Trespass pads. There's some sweat in my back out because it's boiling.
I imagined you as little grunger.
A what?
Like a mosher. You call mosher.
I had mosher. So I was a bit of a social chameleon.
Yeah.
And it was funny as well because I said I used to do Warhammer. So I used to have the Warhammer box.
Yeah.
And it used to say Games Workshop on it.
And you'd hide it.
I'd have to, man. I used to go to Bolton. So it's like a 524 bus ride, which is a mission away. And it takes like half an hour or something, 45 minutes to get there on the bus. And then I'd come back, and if I was walking back home and I was bumping into some of like my scally mates or my chav mates, they were like, what's that? I'd have to, it's a toolbox. It's a toolbox. Yeah, no, it's nothing. Yeah, it's just tools. Just had to bring them back from my mate's house. And then I'd have to like try to change the conversation because I was just, it was like, I was ashamed of it.
Yeah.
Because it was a really geeky thing. Like, and moshers and like Scallies, chavs, they were at odds with each other.
Do you know what? I remember it was year 8. I decided to be. We called them grebos when I was there. We're just talking about our childhood now, and it's not even about Islam now. But it's fine. We'll go back to Islam.
People getting an insight into.
So year 8, I went right because I in year 7. Right, so mine was a little small town in southern England, mostly white people, mostly middle class, but I was working class, yeah. So it wasn't that violent. The most you get, like, there's nothing compared to yours. No dog poo on the handles or anything like that.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, so in year 7, I hung out with all the chavvy type people, but during the summer holidays, I got really into rock and stuff, Qur'an radio. And all that.
I used to listen to Qur'an.
Yeah, and
when I was a bit, like I say, a chameleon, so I'd listen
Yeah.
to Qur'an. I used to love, like, System of a Down.
Yeah. So this is the journey I went, and then in my teens I went full on punk mohawk.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures.
But in year 7 I decided. So there was this band called Linkin Park, probably remember them, and one of them had like little twisty like spikes on his hair, blonde ones. I went, I want that. I was like, wait a minute, you had curtains yesterday, Ben. You want a twisty spiked? Yeah, dyed it. My mum, what are you doing, mum? Why are you dyeing it like?
Why are you facilitating this?
Yeah, you facilitating shit, right? So I dyed my hair blonde, spiked it, got a big Slipknot hoodie, big baggy trousers with a chain.
Yeah, you'd have got battered.
But this was no.
You would not have had a good time.
So what happened in year 8? Because everyone just popped up. So all these people that were the chav, they just because it started becoming cool. So and there was just a big split, and then one day there was a big battle, like Braveheart, yeah. Freedom, right? And there was just chavs on this side, or townies we called them.
Townies is another one.
And then Grebos over here, which was moshers, yeah. And it was like we all squared up, and it was like, have you ever seen Gangs of New York?
Yeah.
It was like that, but without the fight. It was just all like, yeah. Oh, the teacher's coming now, I'm going to be Larry, and then they'll break it up, like that, and then that was it. And I picked my allegiance, and then that was it.
Oh,
so yeah. Anyway, back to Islam, right? But yeah, you're talking about. So we're talking about your childhood because of the nihilism.
Yeah, so like I was just sort of very Dunya centric, we'll say.
Yeah.
And I couldn't ever quench that first. I didn't really know what I was doing, where I was going, and I was working in call centers. Things were just so repetitive. Welcome to, insert brand name here. You're through to Sean today. Can I take your mobile number, please? Thank you very much. Yes, and how can I help you today? All of that. And it was just the same thing over and over and over and over again, and it felt really fake. And I really hate inauthenticity, and like these environments were just like inauthentic to the nines. And it was even more annoying because they were trying so hard to be authentic that it was annoying. It's like they recognized that they weren't authentic. It's like, how do we make it look like we are? And that's pretty much what most of the training was. It was like, how to trick people into thinking that you actually care about them. Yeah. And I was just getting sick of it. I ended up like with a girl, and we moved in together, and that didn't work out, and we broke up. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to run away. I'm going to go traveling. And I'd just been to a festival, and there was a mate there who I'd met, and he wanted to go traveling too. So I was like, listen, let's just buy tickets now. We've got a date, and then we have to save up, and you've only got until that point.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then we go. No plan. We just one-way ticket to wherever. And he was like, yeah, I'm up for it. And I was like, all right. So we're a bit impulsive. We bought a one-way ticket to South Korea, and we had like 9 months. I started
South Korea. Started at
South Korea.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was where we first went.
Yeah.
And then I sold everything that I had. I was selling things on eBay for a little bit, and then I was working like 12-hour shifts, doing Christmas Day, getting time and a half, and working every bank holiday and saving up as much as I can. I got about 10 grand. I spent 3 grand on laser eye surgery.
I thought you were going to say your, like hairstyle.
No, laser eye surgery. I had really bad eyesight.
Wow.
So I used to have contact lenses, and I was like, I'm not going traveling, having to pull contact lenses out and touch my eyes constantly every day. So I just blasted a big chunk of it on laser eye surgery, and now I have X-ray vision.
That's awesome.
So I can see into your soul. And alhamdulillah. And then with the 7 grand, we planned to go see 18 countries in 6 months, and that didn't turn out like that at all. I ended up traveling for 18 months, and I only saw 6 countries.
Yeah. And
it was like we went really slow, but alhamdulillah, I did a lot when I was away. I was in South Korea. I went to stay with Buddhist monks in a temple in the middle of the mountains, a place called Gwinza Temple, and we worked on the farms with them and that, and like they were showing us what they did and how they worshipped, and there was a lot of overlap with Islam, and that was really interesting because some of them would pray, like the monks that stayed behind and didn't work, they would pray like 5 times a day, and they prayed a bit like the Muslims.
Really?
The only difference was it was to a huge gold statue of a man that lived 50 years ago.
Brilliant.
And yeah,
50 years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was not even that ancient. It was just like the guy who founded the temple.
Oh wow! So it wasn't Buddha.
Well, no, Buddha is just a word for an enlightened being. So there's thousands of Buddhas, and you have the original Buddha, which was what's his name? Gautama Siddhartha, the Prince Siddhartha, and he was like one of the first
just
Buddhas.
a giant gold statue of a bloke.
It was like 50 years ago he died, and he was this dude. But it was huge, and they had more than just one gold statue. It's like there's loads of them there. But it was a really interesting, in the middle of nowhere. It was built within this valley, and it went up, and there was loads of layers to it, and it was really interesting. And they were like, yeah, you can stay. I was like, all right, and we just slept in this big hall with like, I don't know, hundreds of people, and everyone's sleeping on the floor. And they were like, you can stay here, you just need to work on the farm, and you don't need to worry about anything, we'll feed you, etc. I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so we'd work like 14-hour days. We'd be up at 6 in the morning, we were working till 8, and then we'd come back, we'd get scran, and I was like, right, I'm going to go to bed. And you're about to lie down and crash out at about 10, and then all you hear is just chaos. And it turns out that, no, they don't sleep. They chant really loud from 10 till 3 in the morning.
Whoa.
It's like, all right, I'm supposed to sleep here. And they won't let you sleep, because if you do sleep, there's a monk with a stick and he hits you. And you to get
well,
up.
as a guest?
You're not a guest. You're just in a temple. You're supposed to be worshipping or or meditating or doing stuff. And obviously I'm still non-Muslim at this time. And so me and my mate are trying to sleep because we're knackered. And he keeps just... And it's a stick that makes a noise. Yeah. So when they hit you with it, it goes shh. And it's because of the way that it's made or something, it claps. I don't know. And so we're waking up, and what they made you do is repeat the name of one of their Buddhas, or one of someone that they really liked. It was the word was Guanze Umbozai, and you had to repeat it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it was chaos because they weren't synchronized. So everyone was doing their own things. That guy over there was doing it really quickly, like da 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 da. That guy was da 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 da. Someone else was singing it, and it was like, you know, when you go into a playground and it's just
and everyone's like
like just pure madness everywhere. It was like that, and we were knackered. We had to go beg them. We said, listen, we can't do this for 5 hours, work for 14 hours, and sleep for 2. Like, we're gonna die. We need at least, like, we're used to like 8-9 hours sleep. Give us 5. We'll meet you halfway. Like, and they agreed. So we had to sort of like meditate with them for 2 hours, and then after 12 o'clock they promised not to hit us on the head with a stick. So we'd go to sleep, and we'd wake up we'd go to sleep at about 12, wake up for about 5.
This is so far-fetched. So these tourists, right, in this context, on their...
Not tourists.
Context, you were tourists?
We weren't even really tourists. We were working on the farm.
Yeah,
and there was no white people there. There was just pure Koreans.
Yeah, okay.
It wasn't like a tourist hotspot.
When you like joined the community... were they like, why? What are you doing here? And you're like...
I don't know. They didn't speak English.
They just went, yeah...
They were just annyeonghaseyo, which is like Korean for hello.
Okay.
And they said other things.
And then you went, oh.
There was a couple of them that spoke English.
Yeah.
One of them was always working at the information desk at the front.
Yeah.
And she was another monk. And we never really saw her because she didn't work on the farms. And then there was another who was the youngest of the monks. He was like at the bottom of the monk hierarchy. And he spoke English. But we were always quite busy. And monks apparently are just not that talkative. So you're not really having that many conversations. You're busy like planting rice, tending to the chili fields and stuff like that. And the odd time I did get to have conversations, it was always through that one man, and he would translate for us. But it was very difficult because his English wasn't.
I bet you were like,
amazing.
I was in this world where there was no meaning to anything. I work silly hours for nothing, rinse and repeat. So I'm going to go travel. What are you going to do? I'm just going to go to this place, and, you know, it doesn't really mean anything. I'm just going to work for about 10 hours.
To be honest,
was that how you felt?
No, to be honest, like,
so
I'd been feeling nihilistic before I went traveling.
Yeah.
And I started getting a bit depressed before I'd left, and it's one of the reasons I went was I was sort of running away rather than running towards anything. And so when I was there, this was like a huge form of escapism. It was like a massive adventure. I was in the middle of nowhere. It was crazy. We ended up there randomly. Like, we were with someone who's like, yeah, I'm going to go visit a temple. And we're like, oh, yeah, we'll join you then. And then we ended up there. Yeah, we were just like
crazy,
a part of this temple now.
Yeah.
But we were only supposed to be there for a night. And then I was like, I don't want to leave. And they said, yeah, you can stay.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, all right, I'll stay. And yeah, we were just like doing bits. And I was really like just like hungry for something. So I was like eating it up. Like, give me whatever information you can. I want to know what's going on here, because this was a community of people that lived in the middle of nowhere, and they were Korean, so they come from like Seoul's. I don't know if you've seen South Korea, but it's pretty like modern. Like, it's not like Seoul is a crazy place. It's like the home of Samsung, man. It's, Samsung is Korean. It's 2 numbers. Samsung are 2 numbers in Korean, I think.
Okay.
And and it was madness. And what people would do is they would try to escape from city life, and they would go and stay in these temples and commit to them and become monks. And so that you had this like people were trying to find meaning here, and you could see it, that they were experiencing meaning. They were like, they were having experiences. There was one guy, and I told you everyone would like be meditating, and so this guy was meditating. His voice, he was really loud, and to begin with, it really annoyed me. And then I started falling in love with his voice, and I had to move close to him, because in all the madness and all the chaos, the closer I was to him,
it was unified.
Yes. Yeah. And so I ended up really liking him. He couldn't speak a word of English, but he would get into it, and he had the way he sang. It was like really, it was amazing. And so I used to try to stay near him. And then one day I was just like bonding with this guy, but it was only like a one-way relationship. Like, he just didn't even know I existed. And I like, while he was in the middle of his little chant, I went and I tried to like get his attention, and I knocked him out of it, and he started crying, and I felt so guilty. I was like, oh, what have I done? And it turns out he was hitting some crazy peaks doing whatever he was doing. Yeah. And I just completely ruined his high. And I was like, oh, sorry, that was awkward. And then he cried. And I was like, I shouldn't. I shouldn't do that. But like, this was opening me up to this notion of like spirituality and things like that. Because when I was meditating, I started having these weird experiences too, where I would have like, I'd see things, and like, it was, the world was becoming less linear. This atheistic mindset that I have, I was sort of like leaving it behind. And things were weirder than I thought. And the more I talked to them, like, it was like, they had these ideas of things that sounded to me like Jinn. So one of the guys who was like the head honcho of this Buddhist temple, he went to sleep. He woke up one day, he could speak Chinese.
That's meant.
Or he went into a meditation or something, and all of a sudden he could speak Chinese. And he described that there's this other creature, or these other beings. And I was listening to him, and I was like, go on. And he's like, that live in another dimension. And I was like, oh, go on. And he was describing that, and he said they were one-eyed, so they have one eye, and they have one concave ear on the back of their head, and that they had this notion of reincarnation and all this stuff. And he said that we had our destinies were linked, but we were two different species, and that he could communicate with this other species. And like, the way he would describe them, it was just like it sounds like the Jinn.
Yeah, every culture and every like religion, tribal religion, all parts of the world have Jinn, but they're just they just got a different name, but all the attributes are the same.
Yeah. It was, and there was so much overlap. And then it was like, and I was looking, it's like it feels like there's some sort of link here between these religions that goes really far back. But then I was looking, but why worship that big gold statue? And these things would irk me a little bit. And I remember just thinking, like, this just seems a bit too far. Like, I don't know why I don't know. It was weird. And I did come across some people that would refuse to like engage in directing themselves towards these big gold statues, and I found that quite interesting. And like everywhere I went, I was just always comparing everything to like what I'd been learning about Islam and things like that. And like, Islam was always like the sort of one of the central, I mean, obviously Christianity a little bit, because I had a huge background in that. But there was always this sort of cross analysis between what I was discovering with what I had come across in the past, and trying to figure out, well, what's going on here exactly.
Talking about being around that sort of, like, I'm not going to use the word extreme, very different religious practices.
Yeah.
I want to just quick little story. So in my journey, in the middle of my, like, from take a shahada to now, there was a bit where I wasn't practicing. Okay. And I went to Germany once, just on holiday. We went to this cathedral because that's what tourist things were there, and it's identical to the Notre Dame one in France, but it's just in Germany. And I went in. It's a big Catholic cathedral, and I just like, you know, I said I didn't have any connections with Catholicism or anything. It just shocked me that there's just it was like an idol house. Yeah. Just statues of and then there's women and men on their knees praying to this bloke that died in the Middle Ages. Like, what's going on? And I just had this weird feeling in my stomach and my lungs of dread, and when I couldn't breathe, it was horrible to see all these people worshipping stone and wood. And you walk around and you got all these pictures of saints and then I looked at one saint and I looked him up on Google, and what he does, if you pray to him, he's really good with getting your wife pregnant, so you pray to that one, and it's mental.
Well, you say that when I went, because like I say, my family were Catholic, but those were the kind of churches we used to go to. There used to be statues of Mary and Jesus, and funnily enough, one of the things my mum always used to talk about was her experience, because her story's a bit unique. So her mother, my grandma, the one I said was a bit mental, she ended up in an insane asylum. My mum's dad got run over by a train when she was a baby because he was drunk. He stumbled on a rail track somewhere, got run over. So my grandma moved to England with my mum and got married to someone else, and then she started losing her mind, and he ended up divorcing her and marrying her sister. And my grandma was in the insane asylum, and my mum was being raised by her mum's ex-husband and her auntie. And they were very religious. And the Catholic priest always used to come to the house and stuff like that. And my mum would always ask him questions. And one of the things that she couldn't get her head around was the divinity of Jesus alayhi salam. And I remember she would always talk to me about this when we were growing up, about Jesus isn't God. Like, he's a man, he's a prophet, but he's not God. So it was funny because she'd always sort of propagate this tawheed. And she came from, and she wasn't Muslim by any means. And, you know,
it's the fitra.
Yeah.
So what my experience with that cathedral is, it was the beginning of me coming back. It reminded me how blessed I was that I'm not kneeling to these things, and that how wrong it was what they were doing. So I was.
Well, that's what she always reiterated as well. She's like, "Why are we like? Who's this guy?
Yeah.
Like, how do you know this is what Jesus looked like at all?" And like, if you're not sure, like, if we got his family album, no, like, we have no idea what Jesus alayhi salam looked like. So why are we building these statues? Look, you've got all these pictures of Mary and these statues of Mary, and then next man, you know, this saint, that saint. When I was going traveling, one of my aunties, she gave me a card which was Saint Christopher or something, I can't remember, the patron saint of traveling, and she was like, he'll protect you. You know, just make a little prayer to Saint Christopher and he'll look after you. And it's like,
I think these things is what reminded me of the importance of Tawheed. Reminded me, and it was one of those nudges to come back to the deen. That's when I started drifting back, alhamdulillah, and firm now, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
But right, so you're traveling, you're in a Buddhist monk place, but we're talking about nihilism and this reawakening of remembering Islam during this.
So
the nihilism came after it, didn't it?
Well, the nihilism started creeping in way before. It was like life was just felt so empty and hollow.
I just realised that some of the audience members might not know what you mean by nihilism. It's not a day-to-day thing people say.
Nihilism just means it comes from the Greek nihil, which just means nothing. So it's nothingism, and it's sort of related to the negation of meaning. So that life has no meaning, life has no purpose, everything's pointless, that kind of attitude. It's very pessimistic, very hopeless. And so I was sort of really feeling like that. And a good example of it, you know, when you're a gamer, aren't you? Or used to be.
Yeah.
Did you ever play? Like, I used to really love games like Morrowind.
Yeah.
And I used to power some serious time into them, man. Like, if I'd have done that in real life, maybe I'd have been a millionaire by now. But like, I just invested so much time in mastering certain games, and I always ended up having the same experience. It's like I would smash it, I'd do really well, and I'd get like top stats in that, and then it would just, the meaninglessness of it would always creep in. It's like, what am I doing? Why am I playing this game? Like, I've not gotten anything out of it. Like, it is pointless. And it was, and because a lot of the games I used to play were just one-player games. We didn't really have, like, internet wasn't a huge thing when I was growing up. Like, our multiplayer games was getting Halo. We had a little tiny TV, and we used to sellotape a big piece of wood in the middle of the screen. And then two of us would sit on one side, and two of us would sit on the other. And you couldn't screen watch. That was our multiplayer. Big, and then my mum would come in and like go mental because we've got these huge pieces of wood sellotape to the telly. But and like, but playing these one-player games, it, like, you'd smash it, you'd invest so much time, and you would be like on these epic adventures, and you're like battling dragons and killing things, and you know, like, you're collecting gold, and you become this master, and you're super rich, and you've got to the top, and then it's like, and then the story ends.
Yeah, and then
it's like,
comes.
Oh, it's not valuable at all. There is no value to what I've achieved in this. It's not transferable. I can't, like, maybe there's another kid out there that's going to be impressed by it, but who really cares? And then I started making comparisons between that and life. It's like, oh wow, I'm like really good at Pizza Hut and serving pizzas. Oh wow, I'm good at answering calls at customer service. And it's like, but so what? Like, what does that really matter? And I was really into, you know, like Neil deGrasse Tyson and all of these sort of, like, you know, the pop science kind of guys, dead into the Joe Rogan podcast and all of that. And, you know, it was the same sort of thing that was constantly being reiterated. And they were trying to be sort of existentialists. They were trying to instill meaning through it, but it would always end up leading towards this sort of emptiness where it was like, you know, what's going on with the world? Like, why is it that these things happen? And then if I ever got exposed to other things, like, you know, the severe suffering that happens in the world, I always felt like I was really undeserving of anything that I had. Like, I didn't get why is it that I have running water? Why do I have heating and safety and a mother who loves me? And like, why do I have these things? And there's, you know, other people in the world that maybe deserve it more than I do. And I couldn't really feel like I ever deserved it. And I think that's one of the reasons that I wanted to leave. But so there was this sense of meaninglessness. And then, there was something like I wanted meaning still. Like so I'm traveling, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But the traveling just ended up being like another version of that. So I was jumping out of one bubble, which was Manchester, into loads of other bubbles. So like South Korea had their own bubble.
Yeah.
And I went to Taiwan and they had their own little bubble. And then Malaysia, which is a Muslim country, and that was a little bubble. I ended up running a bar in Malaysia, and I was there for like 8 months. I lived on an island on this beach, and like it was a really small island. Like you could walk from one end to the other in like 15 minutes, and it was just surrounded by jungle, and it was crazy. And it was a bit like a fairy tale. Like the heat of the sun would wake me up in the morning, and I'd stroll out like a proper beach bum, with my long hair that's been bleached gold by the sun, and I'd walk, and I only ever wore shorts, like that was it, just shorts, and I'd wake up and I'd walk about in shorts, and I'd go to bed in shorts, and then it was just shorts, nothing else. And my routine was get up, jump in the ocean, swim with some fishes, get out, and I could do what I want pretty much. But like even that started feeling like hell at one point, because it was like on the surface it was paradise, but there was lots of ugly things under the surface. There was a lot of the locals had drug problems, people were on meth, people were on heroin, and so even when I found paradise, hell would creep back in. And it was like the suffering of life was present here in this paradise. People had died. Someone got murdered in the mountains. Someone got run over by a speedboat and got chopped up because of it. The locals had all these drug problems, and they were constantly fighting with tourists, and it was just, you couldn't escape it. And then there was a couple of lads that were about my age. I had a lot of love for them. Like, I used to chill with them quite a lot. And then I found out they were like addicted to heroin and meth, and they were like young lads, and I didn't know at all. And then I found them in my toilets at the bar that I worked, taking drugs.
Wow.
And they just acted like it was normal, like it was cigarettes. You know, there weren't nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
And it was like, and they couldn't really speak English, so I couldn't even communicate to them like why I find this thing in particular so abhorrent. Obviously, I've got a whole history with heroin with regards to my father, and that, so I could never see it as normal like they did.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And it was just like that. And then there was this whole ego thing with travelers. It was like everyone's collecting their brownie points. Like, how long have you been traveling? How many countries have you been? Have you been off the beaten trail, or whatever it's called? You know, beaten track. You know, did you travel ethically? Did you go to the tourist traps or not? You know, how extreme of a traveler were you?
Yeah.
And like, obviously towards the end of it, I was like 18 months deep. I'd worked in a bar. I'd gone here, there, and everywhere, and blah 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 blah. And I could feel like I was really getting a sense of how this thing was, as much as people like would engage in this to try to escape the ego or be egoless, like it was still a huge part of the whole culture of being a traveler. It was all very, very egotistical. So even my attempts to try to escape it just sort of ran me straight into it.
It
just transformed into something else, but it was still there, it was still present. And the inauthenticity.
What was it like when you came back?
Depressing.
Yeah.
Because I was getting homesick, so I'd been away for like 18 months. Towards the end, I'd been working in like a tiger temple, so I was looking after little baby tigers and that. And this was like a really weird, controversial place. It ended up in the news not long after I got back, and got shut down because they were dead dodgy apparently. And it was very conflicting because it was a bit of a tourist trap, but it was a Buddhist temple. So it was like spiritual, but it wasn't really. It was super capitalist, and it was like, what on earth is going on here? And I didn't really want to go there to begin with, but and I had friends who'd been there, and they convinced me, you got to go, like, make your own mind up. So I was there. I was in this place called Kanchanaburi. I was in Kanchan for maybe 3 months, and I was in the temple for 2 months. And I was like in charge of the tourists and people coming in, and some people hated it. Some people would like cry when seeing these tigers in cages and things, and I could relate. It's not nice, but that's another story. And some people loved it. Some people liked to take pictures of tigers and that and put them up as a profile picture. But even that was like feeling really pointless, and I was like, I need to go home. Like I need to go see my family. I miss my mum. I miss my brother. I miss my sister. So I didn't tell them, and I snuck back. I got a flight. And then I was like knocking on the door and hiding around the corner. They had no idea I was coming back.
Yeah.
And then I was like, boo, I'm home. And then, that was nice. I got to see them. And then I got my old job back. And I was just expecting things to be like amazing. I just had these high expectations of what life was going to be like. And I felt like I'd changed so much because in a year and a half, I'd experienced more than I had done in my entire life. Like by maybe 10 times more. There was just, every day was something mad was going on. You know, crazy things were happening. And then I got back, and it's like someone had pressed pause in Manchester and waited for me to come back, and then press play. And it was like everything, nothing had changed. Like everyone was doing the same things. It was like Groundhog Day. And the excitement of my return wasn't long lasting. Like people were buzzing I was back, and they were interested. And then like it got to a point where it started feeling like my stories were annoying them, and I could kind of see why. It was like I keep going on about this super exciting life of all of these mad things, and they're just sort of like working, doing 9 to 5, doing things like taking drugs on the weekend and drinking alcohol, and or they've got kids and they're stuck, and you know this kind of thing. And it stopped being something people wanted to talk to me about. But then that was me. That was the only thing.
That was your thing. Yeah.
So I didn't really feel like I could talk to anyone, because whenever I did, I could sense they were getting sick of hearing about it. So I had to just stop talking about it. And then, like at that point, it was like I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I wasn't enjoying being around the people that I was usually around.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy doing the things that we used to do. I was starting to hate alcohol. I was starting to hate the whole drinking culture thing, and I started hating the conversations and the chasing women and all of that. It just like didn't offer anything for me anymore. And then I was really heavy on the weed at that point, and then I started hating that as well. And then it was like I hated everything at that point. There was like life was just
rubbish.
Yeah, painful. And so I left. I was living with my brother and his friends, and I moved out, and then I just isolated myself for a couple of years basically, and it was not that long after I got back that I ended up, obviously because I was sort of locked in an attic for most of the time on my own. I was doing a lot of reading. I started reading the Qur'an again. I was very into New Age religion, so I was reading a lot about Hinduism and a guy called Ramdas, Eckhart Tolle, these New Age types. And I was just sort of like exploring religions again and trying to figure things out and reading different scriptures and trying to just figure out what on earth was going on, and why I had this like weird. I read something later that put it pretty well. Thomas Nagel, who's an atheist philosopher, he talks about the absurd, and what it is this: you have this innate need or urge for meaning as a human being. Like we just need meaning, and then you have this unreasonable silence in the world. Like it's like being born with thirst, but there's no water. And that's the existentialists refer to it as like the experience of the absurd. And like it couldn't make heads or tail out of it. Like why on earth would we have these faculties for, a desire or need for meaning if there is none? Like it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, and so I was trying to find it. I was like, where is it? Where do you get this from? And like looking into Buddhism, looking into Christianity, looking into all of these other things, they weren't really doing anything. Whereas the more I was looking into Islam, the more boxes it was ticking. And I think at the time I was like watching the YouTube videos, and I'm pretty sure I came across the Dawah videos and stuff like that. Yeah. And I was listening to what they were saying, and I was reading about the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about the life of the Sahaba, and I was seeing the suffering they were going through, and I could really relate to the things they were going through. Obviously what they had to deal with was much worse than what I ever dealt with, but like I found it really easy to try to put myself in their shoes when they were going through the period in Mecca when people were like stop talking, don't stop trying to spread this message or that message or blah blah blah, and the suffering and the pain that they went through, I could feel it reading about them. And it was like I could sense sincerity in the stories of these people, and I could sense that there was something a lot more to this, and why would they have been so committed to this despite everything that they were going through, and there was no victory in sight for like more than for a decade, but yet they committed, and you could sense that they were having this thirst satisfied. And that was like amazing for me. I was like, subhanallah. Well, obviously I didn't say subhanallah at the time, but that was what drew me to it. And so I was really looking into it, and I was thinking about Tawheed. And at this point I was becoming a lot more inclined to the belief in a God and a deity, because you're looking at the world, like obviously when I was traveling as well, especially you seeing things like tigers, seeing things that just constantly instill awe in you. When I ran the bar in Malaysia, it was a Muslim island, so they used to play the adhan in the morning when we'd been degenerates all night, messing about, getting drunk and acting like fools. We were looking like muppets, sat on the grass somewhere or on the beach, and then the adhan would play, and as we're getting ready to go to bed, all the Muslims are getting up for prayer, looking bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and we look like absolute messes, and we've just been dragged through the jungle. So it's stupid. And like, and the adhan, whenever I heard it, it always had a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
Like, and the first time I'd ever heard it was when I was about 17, 18. I went on a lad's holiday in Turkey.
Right.
Same sort of thing. I was like, I'd been out on a night out. We'd been getting drunk. We'd been messing about all night. My mates are acting like muppets, getting into fights, chasing women. And then, like, at the end of the night, I'm just sick of it. And I remember looking at the stars and then just being in awe at how small I was.
Yeah.
And then, like, but I can't explain it other than just as a severe sense of awe, looking at the universe, looking at creation, and just being amazed by it. And then relating myself to it, like, what am I? Like, what is this? What's going on? And then comparing, and then, like, turning around and going from feeling like I was really small and then looking at ants, and ants were moving about on the floor underneath me, and then all of a sudden I feel really big.
Yeah.
And like trying to figure that out, like how one minute I feel really small, next minute I feel really big. And then I'm looking at these little things and it's like, do they suffer from depression? Like, do they suffer from existential crisis? Like, this ant's just doing what it needs to do. It's busting about. Like, why am I going through these type of things? And I don't see that happening with these little dudes here. They're just like engaged.
It's like everything in the universe is doing its job and it's in its place, and we're the odd one out.
I'm out of sync.
Exactly, out of sync.
Yeah. And I couldn't make sense of it. And subhanAllah, bro, there was someone who gave me their iPod or something. I was listening to Alleluia.
Right.
Alleluia. And then the adhan hit. And that was the first time I'd ever heard the adhan. And I remember not understanding what on earth it was talking about, but like it really reined in that sense of awe. Like, I remember hearing it, and there was a huge impact it had on me. And then that was when I was like 18. Obviously, many years later, I'm now in Malaysia. Same thing. You've got the adhan playing at the end of the night after just spending a day being degenerates. And maybe I shouldn't use that word, but you know what I mean.
It has the adhan has a spiritual effect.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was saying. I knew it was like the call to prayer. It was as vague as that, and it's like, well, obviously they're not just saying call to prayer, call to prayer, call to prayer, call to prayer, call to prayer. Like, there's other things being said in it, and but like I just wanted to be silent. I just wanted to listen to it. I didn't want to do anything else, and I had that experience so often on that. I was on the island for like months. And so it was very, very often I would hear the adhan. And and so like just like linking these experiences, reading the Qur'an, and the Qur'an itself was like, it would make me serious. It would make me think seriously and take life seriously for a minute and ask proper questions and reflecting on it. And it was and not just that, it was like when I was reading it and I was thinking about like the Sharia and the laws and the things that it's telling me not to do, like I knew why I shouldn't do these things. Like I saw the wisdom in it. Like I knew I shouldn't be drinking alcohol. I knew I shouldn't really be taking drugs. I knew that swearing too often, or that like chasing women and like, you know, all of these behaviors that I was engaged in, and then watching people around me doing the same thing, I knew it was wrong, and I could see why it was wrong for them as well. I could see why like our society in general is suffering because of a lot of these issues. And just thinking, you know, imagine if everyone believed this and implemented it, how that would change them and how that would change society and how many things would be removed. But by no means like necessarily become a utopia. Obviously it's always going to be a difficult thing to try to establish, but like I could see how many issues would be taken away, and it would always speak to you on a very fundamental level. And like it was talking to that bit that I would try to hide even from myself and from everyone. And then that thought about Allah was always like, you know, Allah is that which you just can't hide anything from. There's something out there that no matter who I try to make myself seem to be in front of others, because I was very egocentric, I was very concerned about what people thought of me or how. And I wanted to be the cool guy. I wanted to be X, Y, Z. And what happened was it felt like what was me dissolved. Like I was empty, and I was like, it's maybe a point where I was sort of really, really taking it seriously. Like, who am I? And like before then it was like I was the traveler. I was this, I was the that. I could do fire poi and spin things round. I was the guy who worked in a tiger temple. I was like, and those were the things I thought I were. And then eventually I got sick of it. And so I was throwing all of these things away, metaphorically. And then all that was left was, quote unquote, nothing, but just me and God, like, pretty much is the only way I can explain it. And that he, no matter how much I tried to hide, no matter who I tried to be in front of other people, that, like, I can't hide anything from him, from the one who made me. And that there's a part of me, as much as I try to keep it secret, like, he has access to it. And that would force this, like, I don't know how to explain it, maybe like a severe authenticity in me. Like, I became, when I was alone and it was just me and this being that could see everything about you, that you can't hide anything from, I'd become sincere for a moment. There's a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. That's what you needed to go through to get where you are now. So from then, how long was it until you took your shahada and took the steps to become a Muslim? What was going through your mind when you first thought, I need, Islam's actually true, I need to do this? Yeah,
well, I was, like I say, looking into many things at that point. And the Qur'an was part of that. And there was loads of other things being mixed up into it. So there was the New Age religion stuff, there was Hinduism, there was this, that, and the other. And it was very left-wing as well. So that there was, like, this very political skew. And I was just, like, trying to be as sincere as I possibly could. And so I think at one point I was just, like, praying, like, whoever it is that's in charge for this, like, I turn to you, like, guide me, help me. And so I made, like, a little dua. Obviously it wasn't explicit because I was sort of on my own. I didn't have, at this point, anyone around me, mainly because I was sort of isolating myself. I was cutting everyone off. Whatever ties I had, I was removing them. And I was avoiding as much contact as I could. And it wasn't too long after that I eventually was reading more and more Qur'an, looking more and more into the life of the Prophet and Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. And eventually it was just like I believed in God. I believed God was one. I believed Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a prophet. I believed the Qur'an was the word of God. And the only thing that was stopping me, again, was this worry of what other people might think of me.
Yeah.
And then I just had to shout at myself at one point. It's like, well, if you believe in all of these things, why do you care what anyone's going to say? Like, what's that going to matter when you're dead? Like, really? Are you going to be like, oh, well, you know, they were going to call me names. And, you know, you're just going to look like a muppet. Like, be sincere, be authentic. If you believe in it, then commit to it. So I took my shahada. And then things sort of developed slowly from there. It was a very long process. I didn't become super Muslim overnight.
Yeah.
You know, it was the beginning of that
journey. I remember you telling me a while ago that you kept it secret for a few years, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't tell no one. There was a couple of Muslim friends that I mentioned it to, but other than that, I didn't tell no one.
When some of my friends found out, I was like, no, I'm just like, just want to learn a bit about what Islam is, man.
Yeah, sort of ashamed.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm not really like, I'm just kind of, you know, I just wanted to learn more about it and stuff. And I just couldn't say to them, no, I believe it. Because I knew it would bring on argument stuff. I just couldn't deal with that. So,
same thing. And I knew as well, because so, like I say, I came from a very council estate background.
Yeah. And you get bullied.
It wasn't bullied.
It's
like,
different.
It was just, I knew what kind of conversations were going to be had. Because I was around these people and I could hear what they would say about Islam. I could hear what they would say about Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I heard what they thought about the religion.
Yeah.
And obviously I just didn't agree with a lot of what they said, but I could hear it. And they didn't know that I was Muslim. And so they would just speak openly. So you have this sort of like camouflage cloak.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're sort of the mole behind enemy lines.
You still have it now, bro. A lot of people don't think, I don't know about you, a lot of people don't think I'm Muslim when they meet me, work dues or whatever, and then people were like I remember...
you a hipster? You just make coffee, don't you? I don't know.
One guy was talking about his beard, and he was like, yeah, and I had it really long. They used to call me the jihadi guy and stuff like that, and they used to take the mick out of Muslims, and I was like, I didn't bring it up because it would bring
awkward.
It'd be awkward for him and stuff. Because I don't think he meant it maliciously.
Yeah.
But it's you get loads of that.
You get that sinking feeling in your stomach.
Yeah.
Because it's like, they don't know.
Yeah. They don't know.
They don't know.
Yeah, it's true. SubhanAllah.
And that happened a lot. And so there are people in my family that will just say they're not fond of Islam at all, and they're very actively against it. And I'd hear all of the things they would say, and I knew that it's going to be so awkward when they find out that I'm a Muslim.
So when did you come out? How did it happen?
Say it was like maybe 2 years later.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've just got to tell my mum. I think I told my sister before, and my sister's really supportive. May Allah bless her and guide her. And but yeah, she was always really nice about it and dead understanding. I told my brother he didn't care. Just lad to lad. Oh, it's all a bunch of crap anyway. And may Allah guide him too. Because I've got a really, really good bond with my brother, my sister, and my mum. We're really close as a family. Alhamdulillah. And then I was like, now I've got to tell my mum. And that was like so hard because I knew that she's going to be afraid, or like she's going to be scared about what that meant. And so I remember I was like, you just got to tell her, you got to tell her, you got to tell her. So I was like, right, she's coming over. You're going to tell her today, you're going to tell her today. And I had to like do it. I think I probably chickened out a few times. And then like I was nearly going to tell her, but that feeling of panic, of fear, of like, my heart it felt constricted, just like trying to explain to her, or even thinking about explaining to her. And then one day I was just like, you've just got to do it now. So she was sat down, I was like, Mum, I've got to tell you. I felt like I was coming out, you know, like in the closet Muslim.
Yeah.
And so I sat her down, I was like, Mum, I've got something to tell you. And the second I said it, I saw her face drop. So I feel she was already scared of what I was going to say. I hadn't even said it yet. And like my heart just felt, not good.
And then, what did she act when you said it? It was like, I'm Muslim now.
So I said it, and then her face drops more, and she's like, "Oh, you're not gonna go over there, are you?"
Yeah. Alhamdulillah, my family were they're so liberal. It was like, yeah, man, do what you want as long as you don't hurt anyone. Yeah, and they were cool with it.
My mum's a bit liberal as well, but it's like we'll just say very right-wing connections within the family as well. So like there's always that sort of element there, and she hears a lot about all of the bad things happening over there. So her fear was just that I was going to go run away and join, the you-know-who. And it was like, no, Mum, that's not. That's not. You don't have to worry about that.
You have the thing of being a Muslim for 2 years without. No, it's like, have I changed in the last 2 years? What have you seen?
Well, the thing is that I was really ninja.
Yeah.
So at this point, like I say, I was on my own. So I didn't have a sheikh or anyone teaching me. I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know what was obligatory, what wasn't. All I knew was that I believed in God, and I believed in the Qur'an. I believed in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I believed that I shouldn't eat haram food. And so rather than having to deal with telling everyone, no, I can't eat that, is that halal or not, I just became vegetarian.
Yeah. And
then I didn't have to, I was like, no, is that meat? I can't eat it. I'm a vegetarian.
Yeah, it's easier, isn't it?
Yeah.
So to be honest, it's good advice for someone in that situation where they can't tell anyone yet. It's well socially acceptable to I'm doing veganary. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to do that now.
Yeah, I'll just be a vegetarian, like, because you can still drink your milk and get your eggs in you and that and all of that stuff. But it just saves that awkwardness, especially if you for whatever reason need to put it off. Ideally, it's good if you can just jump straight in the deep end. But I know how hard that is, so I'm not going to say that everyone's going to do that. And for those who really don't feel like they can, vegetarian's the next best thing. And so it was that. And then like I just obviously wasn't drinking alcohol, and I wasn't really going out or doing anything anyway, so I was just sort of in my house all the time. And and I guess I jumped from one extreme to the other, and I was in my house for too long. And then it got I think it was like my first Ramadan, and I was really scared about having to fast.
Yeah.
And I knew, I'd found out somewhere, I can't remember where, I'd heard that you don't have to fast if you're traveling. So I was like, I have an idea. I'm going to walk to Glasgow. Because if I'm walking long distances, And not just that, like I'd only just become Muslim, and I was hearing a lot about, the things that the Syrians, I'll make things easy for them, all the crap they were going through. And then it was all over the news about them walking across Europe. And I was like, that's far. Like to go walk from Syria to England, that's a huge distance. And then I was talking to people. I was like, and whenever I mentioned it, it's like, nah, you can't do that. No one can do that. Blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, I might walk to Glasgow. And they were like, no, you're mad. And everyone would make it sound like it's weird. I was like, hold on a sec. It wasn't that long ago that that's what people had to do. Like if you've got family in Glasgow and you've not got a horse, you're walking to Glasgow. Yeah. I was like, why is that weird? And the fact that I wanted to do it, they kept making it. And I was getting sick of being made to feel weird. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. Forget this. And I like the idea of not having my phone or like no internet.
You're doing the mini hijra again, aren't you? A little travel to escape.
Yeah, exactly that. And I knew that I wouldn't have to worry about trying to figure out how to fast and all of that. And I had a little dog at the time called Sausage, and he had a little backpack. I had my little backpack. I had my tent. I had a cooker. I had everything. And then I just started walking north and headed through the lakes and through XYZ and trying to find somewhere to camp in the evening, and then setting off walking in the day and doing that every day. It took me about 19 days. And I think I got just past Moffat or something, and then my cousin picked me up not too far away from it. It was about 190 miles I ended up walking in total. Something crazy like that.
I'll tell you what, mate, we've had a really in-depth view of your journey from when you were younger to really in-depth with the travelling and what was going on in your mind, and this like uncovering the reality of your belief at that time, which is like if there's no God, there's nothingness, so there must be a God, and you found that. But unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up, bro. We might have to have part 2.
Maybe, inshallah.
That'd be cool. Inshallah. But yeah, it's been lovely having you, man. Before we end it, have you got any advice for people who are thinking about becoming Muslim, but are kind of worried about like family and things like that, a bit like you went through?
Yeah, like,
or even the ones that have taken shahada but they haven't told anyone yet.
It's just the biggest thing is sabr, patience. Just, if you believe, commit to it. Like, I think that the thing that would annoy me is when I would hear about people that would just give it up because of these things, despite the fact they believe in one God, they believe Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a prophet, and they would let these social pressures win in the end. That was something I always found infuriating, and so I would just say, just don't do that.
Don't give up.
Don't, just be patient, and like if you're not comfortable telling anyone, you don't have to. Even the Sahaba, when they felt threatened, they concealed their faith. And there was a period, and they didn't become super Muslim overnight. And this is one of the biggest problems: is everyone's like, no, I want to be,
pure.
I want to be this pure thing, like an angel before I take my shahada. And it's the worst approach ever, because no one is an angel, especially today. It's near impossible. And if you wait until you become angelic, you're never going to become Muslim at all. And it just seems strange to put it off, especially if you already believe in God, if you already believe all of the principles of faith. And it just becomes a case of like, acknowledging the fact that you are doing it for other reasons. You're refusing to do it because there's a number of commitments. But it's better to be a believer who isn't perfect than someone who refuses to become a believer.
Bury their head in the sand.
Until they become perfect. And it's just, and the whole taking the shahada is part of the process of becoming a better Muslim in the first place. Like, you start at the bottom. Like, the Qur'an was revealed over 20 odd years. And it says, if we'd have revealed it to them all in one go, they'd have ran away from you. And, they were fed it slowly. And they progressed slowly. And their character was developed slowly. And we should, what are we better than the Sahaba?
Exactly. And the Prophet peace upon him taught the companions to when someone accepted Islam, to teach them slowly. Salah first, Shahada first, Salah, and it was teaching the 5 pillars. And it wasn't teach them all at once. And it was once they've learnt how to pray, then we move on to fasting. And once they've done the fasting, remember, and he's talking about Ramadan as well. It's not just fasting, other times. so you've got to wait for Ramadan to come, and then you've got another whole year, and then what's next? It's Hajj. It's the sunnah to teach a new Muslim slowly and expect them to do it slowly as well. And it's weird, this thing of like, you're Muslim. Why have you got a dog? Why have you done this? Why have you got that?
But this leads into next thing. So you got to be patient with yourself. Not expect perfection from yourself instantly. It is a work in progress, and so long as you know what is right and wrong, and like if you're doing things and you're finding it hard to stop them. If you know it's wrong, and in your heart you're letting yourself hate it. Like for example, I was big on weed. That was something huge for me. Like it was a daily part of my life. I'd smoke it the second I woke up, all the way through to going to bed. That was very difficult for me to give up. But I would let myself hate it, despite being addicted to it.
Yeah.
And it was that allowing myself to hate that part of me or that habit that led to me being able to give it up in the end. And it's just, you've got to be patient with yourself and also be patient with the Muslims. Like one thing, some of the Muslims can be a bit awkward, and they're not too sure about how much they're supposed to try to get you to do. Maybe some of them are a bit more pushy than others, and the worst thing you can do is let yourself get really angry about it, because they're going to pop up. They always are. And some people, they get so furious about it, they sort of push themselves away from the Muslim community completely. And that's the worst thing you can do, because then you're isolated. And it's just be patient with them. When someone's being a bit pushy, just allow it. Like, just, no problem. You don't have to spend time with them. And you can work out who's good to be around and who's not. You don't have to, like, be BFFs with everyone simply because they're Muslim. Like, you can still pick your friends. You can still pick the people you want to spend time with and those who you don't. And if there's some people that you just feel like are maybe a little bit too toxic, or, they're really sort of making you feel way too much pressure, then if you've got the courage to just say, just please, like, calm down a little bit, you're making me feel anxious or whatever, you say to them. And if you're not comfortable with doing that, then just, stay around people who are a bit more, because I have, alhamdulillah, I have some really good friends, and they were really patient with me. And like, there are these awkward moments where, like, you've got these bad habits. Like, I used to swear a lot, and there were some brothers that would be really patient with me and say, you try not to swear. But they wouldn't make a big deal about it. They wouldn't make me feel like an idiot. They wouldn't shame me or blah, 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 blah. They just understood where I came from, that was quite normal. Yeah. And so they would be patient with it. And alhamdulillah, like, now it's not an issue. Like, I don't... Alhamdulillah. Deal with these things. So you need to be patient with yourself. You need to be patient with the Muslims. Sometimes you're going to come across someone who's a bit pushy, but just understand, they have their own background. So some of them just haven't ever dealt with non-Muslims before, and so they're really awkward around people from a non-Muslim
background. Or excited, or want to share something. So you
have that spectrum. So just be patient,
and you'll meet people that you wouldn't ever meet before because you wouldn't have bothered, because you wouldn't have got on. But what brings you together is Islam. So that it kind of forces you to meet people all different walks of life. So you're going to experience now spending time with people that you wouldn't normally spend time with, and then you're going to find those people that you click with, and you're going to find people that you're cordial with. Cordial, is that the word?
Yeah.
There you go. Anyway,
gel with.
Gel with, that's the one. Anyway, bro, one more thing before we end. We've talked a lot about sad things of the life before Islam. What about being Muslim now makes you happy?
Alhamdulillah, the prayer.
Yeah?
Yeah, praying, and brothers, the Muslims. I have a lot of good Muslim friends now. And there's a strange thing. Even Muslim brothers I hadn't really experienced much. Is his name Isa? The brother that passed away.
Yeah.
Isa. I'd never spoke to him in my life. And I saw him on Jordan's channel a couple of times. When I found out he passed away, that hurt me so much. It was really weird. And I had this, like, severe sense of love for him. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. And he probably, I don't think he'd ever spoken to me ever. Like, he might not have even known I existed. And like that, I feel it with a lot of people now, just simply because we both love the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because we both believe and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is what unites us, and that is unparalleled. Another thing, in the non-Muslim days, we all used to fight about who owed who money. Oh, you paid for the bill last time. no, I paid for the bill last time. You've got to pay for it this time. Oh, I saved you half a cigarette. You've got to give me that back. Everyone would write down everything and hold everyone to it and get really upset. With the Muslims, it was a complete opposite. It was like you have to beg to let them give you the opportunity to pay.
Just the guilt of it. Like when you become Muslim, you just feel so guilty. Everyone's giving you stuff,
and you're like, please just let me pay.
Yeah, and then like,
that's really weird.
And then you get this, and then I got to a point where I was like, well, that's just it. They just want to give me stuff, and then I'm like, yeah, I'll have it. Alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair, because I know what it's what. But then I think, oh God, I'm taking all. Wait a minute. So it's not our culture, is it?
No. It's so weird. And like even before I was Muslim, that was a huge thing. Yeah. Like they're always arguing over who gets to pay. And I'm like, this isn't what like I'm used to at all. Yeah, this is really weird. And they're like
doing it for the sake of
Allah. And you can see it's not like an ego thing. Like they really want that reward. Like they want to pay, and then it's like they're competing for good.
Alhamdulillah for Islam and the Ummah.
Alhamdulillah.
All right, assalamu alaikum, bro.
Jazakallah khair.
I'll see you soon.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed the show. Now, if you want to learn a bit more about Islam, we've got this new WhatsApp number. It's on the screen now. So you can message us on WhatsApp. Any questions, we'll have someone there to reply, answer those questions for you. Okay, so if you're a Muslim and you want to give Dawah, we do a free online Dawah training course. We also do a new Muslim mentoring course. So the link should be in the description below. If you're a new Muslim and you want a bit of support learning your deen, how to pray, the foundations of belief, we've got a new Muslim course. It's really good. I've done it myself actually. It's really, really good, and it sets a good foundation for your journey as a Muslim. The link is on the screen right now. It's also in the description. Assalamu alaikum.